Welcome to the Fancy a Brew podcast. I'm Andy the Northern Diver. In this series I'll be discussing adventure, conservation and progression in scuba diving with some really interesting and inspirational divers that you might or not have heard of. The podcast is supported by Northern Diver International and you the listener through Patreon. So grab yourself a brew and enjoy this week's episode. Right then, so Charlie Young, welcome to Fancy a Brew podcast, also known as Ocean Magpie, Maggie, Charlotta, all sorts of different names. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Super duper excited to be here.
It's all right. Both of us will let the side down. We're both on water this afternoon, aren't we? Or this evening.
I know, but I've had like far too much coffee today. And I think if I have any more, I'll just boil over and never go to sleep.
It's a nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we're working at home, that's all I do. Or, worse still, we'll get on the beer about 3 o'clock because you've had too many.
Yeah. It's dangerous, isn't it? Because there's really, I'm finding it hard to find the line between work and home life. So it kind of just feels like I can stay in my pajamas and eat what I want and do what I want when I want. And so, yeah, definitely. I mean, the drinks cabinet is in direct view of where I work. So it can be extremely tempting.
Nightmare. So do you want to give us a bit of an introduction to who you are? So people who don't know who you are can get to know you and then we'll have a chat.
Absolutely. So I'm Charlie Young, a marine biologist, science communicator, adventurer, all-round ocean nerd. I'm originally from Pembrokeshire, and for the last 5 years, I've been traveling the world, working at globally recognized institutions, researching human impacts in our oceans from climate change to plastic pollution. So I've lived in places like Saudi Arabia. I've also lived in Australia, Indonesia. And yeah, basically, I spend all of my time in or around the ocean or advocating for it. That's my jam through and through.
That's your jam. Love it. Your accent doesn't sound very Welsh. What's going on? Is that because you've been moving around?
I'm confused. Yeah. So any accent that I used to have has just been completely flatlined by the fact that I grew up in a part of Wales that you could argue is called Little England beyond Wales. So already the accent's pretty, it's not as strong as other parts of Wales. But then when I was 11, I moved to the Canary Islands and went to an international school. And there again, I just don't think my accent knew what to do. But I also probably sound a little bit South London at parts because both parents are from Mitcham in London. So a weird mix, but I think living around the world definitely does that to you.
When I first came across you, I think it was a video you'd put on YouTube about the Canaries because we've spent quite a bit of time there diving on the angel sharks. Really, that's our biggest. And it kind of stood out. Oh, let's have a look at what she's on about. I'd never seen you on Instagram or anything. So I was watching that, and then you started pronouncing all the names of the Canary Islands really well. So it wasn't just like Tenerife, Tenerife, and you had like a little accent on the end and stuff. So it's like, yeah, she must either speak Spanish really well or must have lived there. And then obviously, since we got to know each other, turns out you've lived there for quite a bit. So what island were you on, or what islands?
Well, so I grew up on Tenerife. I lived in a beautiful little town by the seaside called Puerto de la Cruz, which to the British might be more known as Puerto de la Cruz, which is in the in the north of the island. But I was lucky enough to travel to lots of the islands during my time there. It's pretty easy to just jump on a ferry and hop between them. So I think I've been to most of them, apart from Fuerteventura and La Graciosa. So the rest of them I have. But yeah, just gonna have to go back and try to get to the ones I haven't. But they're an amazing place.
Where was that first one you said you'd not been to?
Fuerteventura.
Is that near Fuerteventura?
Yeah, it is actually, coincidentally.
He doesn't pronounce it like that, incidentally, either.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's I mean, I think the reason I pronounce them like that is because I've got a heck of a lot of stick over the years. If I didn't pronounce it that way to my Spanish friends, they would grill me for it.
Would they? That's great.
Yeah.
So you've lived overseas quite a lot. Is that as a kid, like you've moved around, or more so as an adult, as a post grad?
I think, yeah, Yeah, so work has taken me around the world. I think my appetite for it was definitely sown through my parents taking me to the Canary Islands. Whilst I was there, I went off to Austria and various places on little holidays, but it was afterwards really going into conservation biology. That's what I first studied at university. It was there that sort of, my eyes were open to the world, and having already experienced living abroad, I wasn't afraid to sort of go and explore it. And I think I just have such a desire, after being immersed in one culture and living in Spain and learning a different way of life. I have a thirst for sort of going and having those experiences elsewhere. So any opportunity I've had, I've taken it. But I'm lucky that my job is an international one, that there's some fantastic things that we can do all over the world. And so yeah, it's been a combination, I guess, of that desire to travel, but then also my profession that takes me around the world. My parents have always been pretty adventurous people, and I think growing up, basically I was forced to grow up in a wetsuit. I remember just every weekend throughout the summer, without a doubt, we would pack up the caravan and go camping. So I was always being immersed in the natural world, always sort of being fed adventure, and just fell in love with it. It just became my way of life. And ever since, I've just wanted that to be a part of every part of my life. I've not just wanted the adventure to be a passion, but also to be part of my career. But then also going out and getting into nature and learning about it. I've also learned about the threats that it faces. So by living this lifestyle, I've sort of found my cause, and this is the whole reason that I do what I do, and why I went to university to do conservation biology, because I wanted something that meant that I could see the world, but also do good for the world at the same time.
So did that sort of naturally progress onto YouTube, or is that quite a new thing for you, that?
Yeah, so well, interestingly, I've been dabbling in YouTube very intermittently since 2013, and I kind of kick myself that I didn't keep it up, because I initially first started making videos for YouTube back in 2013 when I was living in rural Indonesia and was working on a slow loris conservation project, and teamed up with this organization called Education Through Expeditions, and kids were asking me questions whilst I was out there, and I was making video responses. So naturally sort of progressed onto YouTube. And I think I'd always wanted to be David Attenborough. I had always admired him. I've always been somebody that's really good at speaking and communicating, and my family has always tried to push that side of me. And so naturally, YouTube seemed like a great opportunity to do that, but I just didn't keep it up. I don't think I had the skills or the knowledge, or maybe even the drive, the incentive to keep it up. But it wasn't until, I guess recently, that I realized just how much of an asset YouTube is for science communication. It's being used so much by people of all ages and demographics, and it's international. And so, really for my science communication, and for also progressing what I hope to be a very fruitful presenting career, YouTube is a fantastic opportunity for me to share the stories, share the adventure, but then also showcase what I can do.
What I struggle with is not having a conversation with somebody at all. I can talk the hind legs off a donkey most days. But my presenter style is very much just, this is how I am. I'm just a northerner that just likes having a chat, likes smiling, likes having a laugh, but clearly doesn't have any formal training. You come across as though it's very natural to you, or maybe you've been trained very well. Now, is that just a really good upbringing? You weren't brought up a northerner, or is it?
I was made to present.
Yeah,
over breakfast every morning.
Good morning,
mother. Morning, mother and father. Yes. Today I'm eating Weetabix. No. I think that I weirdly have just always been someone that just flourishes, I suppose, in front of the camera. I have no formal training whatsoever. I've learned what I've learned through watching other people and sort of seeing what works. But I would argue that my presenting is best when I'm just being me. And it's quite funny how you mentioned that, I'm just, I'm just a guy that likes to have a casual chat. That is how you really need to be on camera. That's the best presenter, is the person that, is the presenter that's themselves, that isn't putting on this facade. And I think that the world is moving away from your classic stringent presenter that's there like, hello, welcome. We are here in the rainforest and there are some wonderful animals behind us. Ha! People want
Sounds
reality.
like you're mocking David Attenborough there.
Oh, but I'm not, because I love him.
No, you know what I mean. He's obviously a household name, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's come from that era, and he's probably one of the few. Like the only perhaps other one that stands out for me would be like Murray Walker, that used to be on the Formula One.
Yeah.
He sounds very similar, but like I said, everyone's moving away from that, and there's people from all over the UK now with very strong accents.
Oh yeah.
The One Show is full of Welsh people. Watch Country File. It's full of people from the northeast, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can't really get away from how widespread the UK has become and allowed people in with different accents. But I do like your style. It is very professional in a good way. I don't mean
thank you.
You're too forthright. I mean, you look like you've been doing it a while, and that's where I haven't been doing it a while, and I wanted to pick your brains because I think, well, how could I improve? If anything else, it would be my way in front of a camera. I saw one of your videos this morning where it was on your Saltwater Britain series, and you'd gone up to Basking Shark Scotland, who we were with in September and didn't see a thing.
No way.
No, but when you were in the water, it was just dead natural. It's like you weren't really aware or didn't care that people were around you and you were actually making a film. Whereas for me, I struggle with that.
Yeah, no, I've had to battle that, because I don't know about you, but every time I whip out a camera and I'm by myself, people go, are you vlogging? And sort of look at me funny and just interject. And I'm like, yes, I am. And if you could just...
until you ruined it.
I was, until you rudely interrupted. And so I've just had to become unapologetically confident with it, because otherwise you'll be there in that moment and miss that opportunity because you're too worried about what other people are thinking around you. And I won't lie to you, like, I know that, well, in that moment when I saw the basking shark, I happened to be the only one that had actually successfully seen it, but I wanted to rave about it, turn the camera on myself, be in the moment, share that enthusiasm. And I know for a fact everyone behind me was going, for God's sake, oh God, secretly hating on me. But I think you have to put that to one side. And it is really, really hard to do that. But I also think personally for me, that's where I flourish best, is when I'm not trying to remember structured lines and I'm just speaking from the heart. And I think that's what people are craving with content these days.
My sort of method of dealing with it and getting over that anxiety is leave the house extremely early, so it's still dark in the morning. Go out and try and get a sunrise on my time lapse, and then talking to camera when there's clearly nobody there. And when you fluff a line, you can just say it exactly the same again. And keep going and going and going, and then as soon as you get in post-production, you just go to the last bit of that segment. Got it?
Yeah, it is tough, but I think the more you do it and the more confidence you have in what you in what you do, the easier it becomes. But also now, I think part of the process for me is that when people turn around and I disclose it before I even start. If I'm with a group of people, I say, hey guys, so I'm going to be doing a lot of vlogging and filming, so it's not just a complete, surprise to them. And I just go for it. I just go for it and just, try to just ignore them, because at the end of the day, everyone forgets about that. And then when they see the video afterwards, they're like, oh, it's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, it is great. Thanks for making it really difficult by just staring at me the whole time when I was trying to film. But there you go. That's the nature of it when you're a one woman show or one man team.
I almost wish, because I've seen some of the footage where you've got other people either doing the video with you or with you as part of the video. And I'm a lot of the time I'm sort of a self-filming.
Yeah.
So I don't have anyone to feel like my little shoulder to cry on. Or
and oh my God,
might be easier.
Safety in numbers for sure. And as soon as there's a couple of you, everyone takes you seriously. So the otter trip where I went to the Isle of Mull to search for otters, I was with a very good friend and fellow YouTuber, Matt Gold. And, we were kind of supporting each other. And it's inherently hard to film everything yourself, especially when you're on a mission and trying to do something. Just having the capacity to film and keep on top of all of that whilst also think of good things to say. It's really difficult. So definitely that was probably the best episode because I had that extra help, someone that could just turn the camera on me in those moments that are candid or help support me so that it's not just always, me filming myself. So I think YouTube collaboration is the way forward, really. I think it's an asset to all of us to collaborate, but then also in terms of filming makes logistics way easier.
I've been diving with a couple of people, whether it be my wife or one of my mates, but I've passed the camera over to other people, just to take a picture of me. And when you think, oh, why don't you know everything I know how to operate that camera? Just, why did
you wouldn't think it's that hard, but it is, isn't it? Some people just don't. Yeah, and then they get stroppy at you. Like I've had this with people who just obviously don't want to take the picture, but they're there and they're being forced to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough.
So do you tend to work with a script?
Very much depends on the I guess the content that I'm making. So with the Canary Island series, for example, Felipe is the one that's written the scripts. I'm very much the presenter and presenting the episodes. And so that's all scripted. So I have to learn the script beforehand. And I'm one of those people that very much prefers to just try and say the script through all in one go, which can drive me crazy because if I get nearly to the end and make a silly mistake, I'm just one of those, I just have to go back to the beginning. But all of my Saltwater Britain episodes were just very, very loosely planned before with no script. I just knew the moments that I wanted to film and just basically went ad lib with it because, with most of these adventures, they didn't plan out anywhere near how I planned they would or expected that they would. So having a script would have been a complete waste of time anyway. So yeah, but then when I do come back home, I do to fill in the voiceover parts and sort of fill out the story. That's when I will script. And I find that the hardest part. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I do.
Really hard.
You write not the way you would say things, or that's how I find I do. It's only when you then read it back out loud, it's totally different, isn't it? You think totally you'd say it, but it's not at all.
No, I completely feel you with that. And at the moment, I think the thing I struggle with the most being, a one-woman team is that trying to get enough footage so that I can be picky. Half the time I'm just rolling on all the footage I've got, which means that I've got to try and scramble in words to sort of, fill out the story. And so sometimes I am saying things the way I wouldn't say them. And I listen back to myself and I'm like, oh, for God's sake. But, it's really hard. And this is why, documentaries take so much time in post-production and sort of editing. This is why they have such big teams, because it's a hard job.
I suppose David Attenborough's got it easy, hasn't he? Because all of his series, nobody's ever on them. He's just dubbing over the top. So it's only getting the actual footage. Even sound, I suppose, isn't that bad because you could dub it in, you would never know.
And something I've noticed about the big documentaries is that, he doesn't actually say a lot. It's usually just a little introduction, and then they sort of, characterize almost the animal and say a couple of things, and it's normally just very small lines. They do a really great job at weirdly keeping it concise but super informative, which I think is a skill I need to learn.
I wonder if it's him. I wonder if somebody else is writing his script or he's actually still got a massive part in it, because it sounds like him. I mean, obviously it does sound like him, but
yeah,
they're very silly, aren't they?
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of intel there. So from people I know that have worked with him, they write the script, but he is so hot on it. He will question anything. He will, if he's not, he's so intelligent and I suppose just so on it with things that he will double check everything. Apparently a dream to work with, but yeah, he does take an active part in making sure his scripts are right and that he's happy saying everything he's saying.
So do you want to introduce me a little bit more to your Saltwater Britain series that you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. So my Saltwater Britain series started as an idea or a trip essentially last year before all of COVID drama. I was supposed to circumnavigate the UK under my own steam to go in search of the best ocean experiences and marine wildlife and sort of really raise awareness for it and money for the marine conservation charity. oh gosh, I've forgotten the name. Marine Conservation Society, that's the one. And it just all came crashing down. We all went into lockdown. I spent most of the summer, stuck in my flat here in Bristol without a garden. And, I was completely devastated that this trip wasn't going ahead. And by the time we got out of lockdown, there was literally no doing it. So it was nearing sort of mid-June. And I just decided that, well, whilst I can't get around the UK to do a circumnavigation, why can't Saltwater Britain become, a YouTube series? Why can't I just go off on specific adventures in search of that wildlife that I'd hoped to see on this circumnavigation and go and make YouTube videos about it? And so the idea was born. And then I had a think about logistics in terms of time of year, things that I could still see. And I booked my first couple of ventures and went off and completed them around the end of, in August and September. And that included going and swimming with blue sharks off the coast of Pembrokeshire, going out with basking sharks, Scotland, also going and diving with seals in the Farne Islands, and then also going in search of otters on the Isle of Mull. And so those 4 episodes are up on YouTube. So anyone that wants to go and watch them, they can head over to my YouTube channel. And yeah, these were it was like a pilot episode, essentially, to see, would people enjoy this kind of adventure wildlife content? Does it work? Am I any good at it? And it's been an absolute success. People have loved it. And I've just had so many people contacting me off the back of it, saying how much they love it. So yeah, it's definitely something that is on the agenda to continue this year.
So what tips could you give me, a budding YouTuber who's just catching you up, by the way, on subscribers? Not that matters. It doesn't matter.
Darn.
How many watch, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But, how do you go about advertising your work? Because I've seen, more so with the podcast, there's a few of us out there now. Everyone started a podcast last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the best way about going advertising my work without spamming every single page on Facebook, which I don't really use anymore. For that reason, I hate it.
It's a hard question. I'm gonna say social media is probably your best bet. So I basically make short little trailers or teasers for each episode and post them on my reels. So at the moment on Instagram, reels is really kicking off. That's where Instagram is sort of putting all of its effort, because of course it wants to compete as much as possible against TikTok. So reels is a fantastic place to sort of put a teaser, and if you're lucky enough to have 10k followers, the conversion to YouTube is much easier because you've got the swipe up feature, so you can literally pop it in your stories and then people can swipe up to that YouTube video. I'm yet to sort of really discover just how effective that is. I imagine it will be more effective. I've literally just hit 10k the other day, but before that I would just post it in my stories, link in my bio, and again just spam Twitter, Facebook, send it to friends in WhatsApp groups, ask them to share it with friends. It's really hard, and I don't think that there is any set recipe for success with it. But in terms of giving things legs in YouTube itself, the thumbnail and the title are so important. You want to get as many buzzwords as possible or search term hits in your title and make it as engaging as you can. The thumbnail as well needs to be punchy, something that stands out. Use a different title to what you do. Don't just put the title of the video in the thumbnail. What I do with my Saltwater Britain episodes, for example, it'll be photographing otters on the Isle of Mull. Then I'll have a picture of an otter that's really enticing, and then it was Otter This World. And, something that makes people go, ooh, sort of hook them in. So I would say that is, in terms of like getting people interested on YouTube, that's a great way to do it. And then once people watch your video, just always make sure you've got a card for at the end of your video that promotes someone to watch another video of yours. Once they're there, keep them there. So those are a couple of tricks that I've learned from good friends, and I'm testing them out. But I'm still a small fry on YouTube, hoping to get bigger, but it's not easy. It's not as easy as other channels.
No, I found about last April, so about a month into lockdown, I looked at a lot of the content creator series. They have like an online school, don't they, through YouTube, and then I was watching a few other people that make obvious content of what to watch how to go about producing decent content, and thumbnails was the first one. What I'd started doing was trying to use an image, the same image for every single thing, and it just had a different title, and the title was in the wrong place, and then putting too much emphasis, so everything was in the thumbnail. And if you look at the thumbnail, it's literally the size of your thumbnail, isn't it? There's no
Yeah.
point having loads of intricate detail when you can never see
No.
it. It wants to be punchy and eye-catching, and so
Yeah.
I started changing that, and then looked at the sort of back office stuff that you talked about. So certainly the title, and then the tags as well at the bottom.
Yeah.
They were a really big thing. But I think I'm quite a niche market, just doing perhaps scuba diving related videos. Now I've gone
Yeah.
into more, I want to say nature, but there's not a lot of nature. It's just an area with some water and some woods, and it's been
Yeah.
snowing, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But it's a much broader audience.
Yeah.
And same with you. If you don't have to be a diver to be interested in someone diving around seals that want to play with you, or
Yep.
around the biggest fish in our ocean as such.
Yep. No, I completely agree with you. And it is hard, but you know, having a niche that's so small, but at the same time, that's an asset to you, because anything, you know, whenever I've spoken to professionals, they say, you know, when you're at that sort of initial stage, make it simple. People need to just understand when they land on your feed or on your page what you are about. And so you've got that branding down, so like people know that they can come to your channel for scuba diving, and that is really simple. That's like just so obvious, and you know, this builds trust currency, right? Because I think at the moment my channel is a bit of a mishmash. I've got a couple of different things going, you know, whereas I do think that sometimes just having like that one core theme can be really strong and really help you, because it builds that trust in your viewership. People subscribe because they want to see the same thing, or that they want to trust that when they come back to you, that's going to be the content that they find. No one really wants to go and like, you know, if you're interested in fashion and you subscribe to a channel and the next thing they're talking about cooking, you know, you're going to be kind of a bit confused about it. And I think it's the same with us.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'm really trying to push the Saltwater Britain strand, because, you know, that's a very clear sort of thing that people understand. It's adventure, wildlife adventures around the UK, and people understand that and know what to expect.
I've got to say, I'm devastated that when we went in September, we got, I think it was Hurricane Laura, you know, the one that they had on the East Coast. It was the unsurvivable one. Everyone was moving to the West Coast because
Yep.
they're all going to die. And then nobody died, I don't think. Or if they did, I'm really sorry. But we got the tail end of it as such. And it was just dead choppy every day. But then we got the ferry back on the Sunday from Col. But there's a couple that was with us. So one guy, he's the editor of Scuba magazine for BSAC. He was.
I saw that article.
That's me. I was in that. I was made up by that article. Anyway, so we were. They had to stay on the island because they brought the cars, so they had to come back on the Tuesday because the car ferry was full for whatever reason. So they dived on or snorkeled on the Sunday and saw him. So as we were walking on the ferry, we all got text messages. Look what we've just seen. And you're like, you absolute bastard.
Oh, that is so gutting. But you know, I'm curious, what date were you there?
We drove up on the 31st of August. Is that when you
I was
drove?
on the
You left?
boat the second and third, the first and second, and
No way.
yeah. So I think we were on the boat, and that storm came in, and then they weren't like It was touch and go whether your trip was going to go ahead.
So you were on Shane's boat
I was on Shane's boat, so I was literally there
on Tuesday
the day
the
before.
1st?
Yes.
Because that was our first day.
So we switched out. You were on that. Yeah. This is crazy.
I tell you what, I've had a couple of these, you know.
Really?
I interviewed a guy. Have you come across James Glancy before?
No, I haven't.
So he does a lot with like Discovery Channel, National Geographic. He's got his own
feel like I should know
show
him.
on the Mail Plus.
Yeah.
And me and him literally switched out in Afghanistan in 2008.
No way.
So not him personally, but literally he passed us the keys to his vehicle as he was going home. We were coming in. And we're like,
what?
We were just chatting. He said, yeah, I was in Afghanistan in 2008 as well. Where were you? And he said, oh, we did this. And I said, I did that. And he said, what regiment were you in? I told him I was with the Queen's Royal Lancers. And he went, that's who we were with. I was like, oh,
No.
I met you. He said, you probably did. And then it turned out he left in May as we arrived in May. So that's probably why I never saw him. But small world.
Oh, it is so small. And this like sort of, what is it? is it 2 degrees of separation, or
Yeah.
there's
I
some?
think it's 6 degrees, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, if it was 2 degrees, we'd all literally be related to
Mm.
know each other. Yeah, it's crazy. It blows my mind all the time. I've had so many situations like this recently where, I've found out that two people I've met separately are actually best friends. Absolutely crazy.
Anyway, moving on.
Yo.
So it's supposed to be a scuba diving related podcast, this. So tell us about your scuba diving career. When did you get into it? When did you first put a regulator in your gob?
Well, so I can't even remember when the first time was because I was so young. So my
Oh,
dad,
I hate you.
back
I
in the
hate you.
day, yeah, my dad was a BZAC instructor. So I grew up going to all of the pool sessions with him down at the local swimming pool. And so I have lots of memories of everyone being in their dive kit, diving on the bottom. And I would sort of like dive down and pick up, weights off the floor as, lovely game. And, so my dad had all his own dive kit, and so I used to play with that all of the time. But I learned to dive when I was 14. So, at that point, I was probably a lot more interested in friends and boys and stuff. But dad was insistent, considering we were living in the Canary Islands at this point. He was like, you have to learn to dive. And so I learned when I was 14, and yeah, was lucky to learn in Tenerife, which just, compared to UK diving in conditions is just, beautiful, pristine, fantastic visibility, tropical, warm, wonderful. But really, I didn't do a lot of diving actually whilst I lived out in the Canary Islands. After that, I sort of just used to spend all my time at the beach, but didn't go scuba diving as much. More my dad kind of stopped doing it just because he had lost some taste and smell, and he was pretty sure that it was associated to diving, and so he just kind of it petered off a little bit. And so yeah, sadly, I didn't make the most of my time in the Canary Islands, which I regret to this day, because this Canary Islands series that I'm now doing with Felipe Ravina, who's a really talented underwater filmmaker, is just opening my eyes to all of the marine life that I missed. But I really started to get back into scuba diving when I essentially went on an expedition to Indonesia. I was lead scientist. So this is back in 2017 or 18, gosh, what even is time? And I'd done a couple of dives over the years, but it was there that this was my first liveaboard, and I was meant to be leading all the plastics research, but was also getting the opportunity to go and do lots of diving too. And so we were in Raja Ampat and basically got to do like 4 dives a day for 16 days straight, and just was absolutely hooked. Having specialized in marine science, I obviously wanted an opportunity to do more diving, but I guess I'd never really taken the plunge in the UK. But it was there really that I just completely fell back in love with diving, and realized that I wanted that to be a big part of, I guess, my field research and the stuff that I did. And so then I relocated out to Saudi Arabia, and basically my job was to dive every single day, to assist with all of the field research that was happening in the reef ecology lab there. And just you can't beat it really, can you? It's just your office being the big blue, and a bumphead parrotfish might just come and interrupt your field work, or a shark or a turtle, and that's just part of the average day whilst you're counting corals and fish. Pretty fantastic.
I think that's why when I look back, I mean, I'm in a good place now. I'm happily married. I've got a good career, as in I run my own business. I'm doing all right at home and stuff. But I do wish, if I look back and go, I wish I'd have been more inspired as a teenager when I was coming through school, that I'd have perhaps gone and done that, because it sounds like an awesome experience. But then maybe I wouldn't end up where I'm at now, and I'm quite happy now. I think there's a lot to be said for being that, and I don't know. There's nothing I can't change it really anyway, can I? So it doesn't matter. There's no point sulking about it.
No, but one thing, so I've only ever done diving recreationally or scientifically, which I'd argue the two best ways to dive is to either go and do research, or go and just have fun. Whereas I've spoken to people that have become dive masters, instructors, and have lived and worked in dive shops, and like that is not an easy profession. It is hard, and being responsible for people. I personally think that I'm glad that any diving I do is always, you know, either fun or has a purpose. And while scientific diving can be really intense, like there's been moments where we're trying to like hammer in stakes into a reef with like, you know, 4 meter swell above us on the reef crest, and it's like a washing machine, you know, or we're trying to drill cores out of massive like corals to, you know, take them back to the lab and look at how temperatures changed on the reef over time. You know, that stuff's pretty intense, but it's still really enjoyable, and there's such a purpose to what you're doing. Whereas I think yeah, I'd find it really hard being a dive guide that had to work endlessly just guiding people around. I think that'd be tough.
I don't expect they get paid that much either. It's not like
No, they don't. They do not.
Calling or a means to get to somewhere, isn't it? Like
yeah.
I enjoyed doing my instructor certificates, and the fact that I've got that tick in the box is a great sort of platform to base what I do now on YouTube and Instagram and that.
Yep.
But I've got no wish to be, and I'm not taking away from anyone who does spend weekends teaching people and bringing someone out to do that for me.
Yep.
But it's not for me that. I'd much sooner be, like you said, with a purpose or with a camera, doing something, getting somewhere, getting something from that to pass on to the next generation to inspire them. So those instructors have got somebody, I suppose. Coming back to the UK now then, a bit of a shock to the system, our cold water, innit?
Oh, just a bit. I nearly died of hypothermia in the Farne Islands diving in a 7 mil in October, which was the stupidest thing I've done.
Yeah. So is that why you then came out and had a cold shower and put it on Instagram?
Yeah, I just had this enlightened moment, near-death experience, and realized that I was stronger because of it. No, the cold water swimming swimming started for me last year. So after the first lockdown, you know, I'm in Bristol. I don't really have many bodies of water that I can get into that were at least within my tier or in my area. And so I started going to a local river to swim with a friend, and we did a 31-day wild swimming challenge, and that was just, you know, incredible. But, you know, well, obviously here in the UK, temperatures get quite a bit colder in winter, but I wanted to keep the swimming up. And even that near-death experience in the Farne Islands didn't put me off. And, you know, I've read a couple of books, Wim Hof, and just seen people rave about it. And I thought, oh gosh, I just need to give it a go. And you know what? It's been life-changing. It's so incredible how such a simple act, such as going for a dip outside in cold water, or even still a shower at home, a cold shower at home, can make such a difference to how I feel. You know, especially as we spend so much time at home at the moment, it weirdly brings this little slice of the outdoors indoors for me. And, you know, close your eyes and you can invoke the images of the lovely British waters around you. So yeah, it's weirdly been a lifeline for me through the pandemic.
So a couple of things I'm going to pull out of that. So Wim Hof, that guy is nuts. I heard him on, you know, Foxy was on SASC, Tough Enough for it.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Well, Foxy, I listened to his podcast. It's the Wild Tales podcast. It's hosted by the Book of Man or whatever. And he had Wim Hof on, and I thought, this guy is absolutely crazy. He's nuts. He's like a dead hippie, and obviously of Scandinavian, Icelandic descent or something. And so he sounds a little Viking and mad and all the rest of it. And quite fun as well. And I'm like, right, I'm going to give it a go. And that's probably around the same time as I heard or came across you. Yeah. We're doing these wild swims, and I thought, right, I've got to give it a go here. So I'll agree, if you turn the shower down so it's not warm, but it's not Baltic cold, there's not ice falling out, so it's not like a slush puppy, and then slowly get in and then turn it down gradually, it's manageable. I can't convince my wife of it, and I've still yet to convince myself of it. Yeah. But then when you say wild swimming and it's really cold like it is now, I'm assuming you're not going in and swimming for an hour. You're just perhaps going in for a bit of a dip, getting perhaps up to your chin or whatever, woolly hat on, and get back out, in and out in a couple of minutes. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I wouldn't advise anybody to go in and try and stay in for hours. That would be no good for you, and that could lead to cold incapacitation and, you know, drowning. So yeah, my process, I mean, when I go outside, there is no sort of easy way to ease yourself in apart from get up to your waist, splash some water on your face, let your body know what's about to come, and then go in, as you say, up to sort of like shoulder just below your chin and swim about. And I always keep a bobble hat on. A couple of people have pulled me up on that, being like, that, that makes no difference. But actually, I feel like it makes a world of difference for me because I'm keeping some heat in. And also I just weirdly feel, I don't know, just a bit
It's a
safer
well-known
with it on.
fact, innit? You keep your feet, you keep your fingers and your head covered, and you're
Yep.
always warmer.
Yep. Well, still people pick me up for it, but yeah, I mean, at home the process I do as well is, I generally go in probably for like a minute or two warm and then turn it right down to cold. I have done just straight cold, but I feel like that just gives you too much of a shock, and I don't think that's
Yeah.
good for you to shock yourself completely getting in. And so I weirdly find showers harder than dipping outside, and I think it's the cascading water that just is more just shocking than just putting yourself softly into sort of like a pool of water. Having that water just like splashing on you, weirdly just feels more. It feels tougher to me, at least.
Remember on that video, as soon as you got your head under the shower, like,
Yeah, for context, for anyone that doesn't know what video we're talking about, I for some reason decided to put a video of myself up on my stories of my first cold shower, obviously wearing a swimsuit. But yes, my expression says it all, doesn't it, really? And I just couldn't handle it. I got brain freeze, such bad brain freeze, and was just screaming and spinning in circles.
Was that fully cold, that as well? Had you turned it
Yep.
right down and gone for it?
I'd gone
Well
for
done.
it. I'd gone for it at that point, and that was, yeah, that was the first one, and it was, whoa. Yeah, it is tough for anyone that wants to get into it. It takes perseverance. It takes a couple of times, but I now finish every shower on cold, and I feel so much more refreshed than I do when I come out of a warm shower.
I do the same. So it's certainly not warm when I get in, but it's not on its
Mm.
coldest setting, and I gradually bring it down, and it does end up on its coldest setting in the last seconds or two as I'm getting out, and I
Mm.
feel marginally refreshed for a second or two.
Yeah.
But listening to other people talk, and they say how they're sleeping better and they feel so much more alive, the skin's better and all this. Now I'm not getting any of that. Not yet. But then again, I'm not getting in water. I'm just showering at the minute.
Yeah.
I can't. There's nowhere for me to go. And you certainly don't want to get in any rivers near us because they're absolutely minging.
Oh God, that's a whole other topic, that is. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. It is a different experience. I find getting into water outside makes my skin soft. All these things you're hearing other people talk about, it definitely has, yeah, a different effect.
So where are you going to go with your cold water tolerance? You think you're going to keep this up and just do more and more wilder swimming through the summer, so greater distances?
Yeah. So what I'm hoping, with all of this training in winter, is that this is something I can keep up all year round. That's the goal, is really to be able to swim all year round. And hopefully I would love to go and do some ice swims. So actually go out to some of maybe the Scandinavian countries. I mean, I'd love to go and do some in Iceland. I just, yeah, I would also love to go somewhere where it's really cold and surf. I think in general, this is just, the objective with it is just to be able to enjoy swimming no matter where I am, and just, go and have those experiences. I guess like getting different dive certifications is so you can go and do different types of diving.
Absolutely, yeah.
Swimming throughout different parts of the year is that process for me.
Well, I'd always struggled, and if you listen to any of the previous episodes from last season,
Mm.
quite often I'll talk to someone that does longer dives, more technical stuff, or in caves and mines that are generally colder, or ice diving and that. And try and get little tips off them how they keep warm, because I really, even in the summer, I'll be struggling. Half an hour in, I'm like, I think it's just I'm missing my cup of tea. I need to get back out for a brew.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But honestly, I can be like that. But I think it's perhaps because I hold such a still profile in the water. I'm not up and down in the water column a lot, or I've took my camera in, so I'm taking a lot of pictures. So I might be really still. So I'm not generating that heat. So I'm very much like a lizard at that point. Or I need something to heat me. A few people that I've spoke to have obviously given me the opportunity to change kit, buy different gloves, wear a different dry suit now. And that's made massive improvements. But me being immersed in colder water apparently can increase brown fats within the body. And these brown fats apparently are what would stimulate or keeping you much warmer. So I'm trying to not put weight on. I think if I can get used to these colder water, maybe it'll help. So
Yeah.
because I'm sick of being cold. It's horrendous.
Yeah, no, and I'm like you, I get really cold on dives. I managed to last an hour in the fans, but I came out absolutely like shivering. I'm someone who feels it very, very easily, which is ironic because I'm probably the last person that you would have expected to like just be jumping in icy waters, especially as I was always that friend that would, go out on a night out with about 5 billion layers, or, was
Really?
never just, yeah, I'm always that person that's layered up to the nines. So this has been quite a change for me. And I think definitely exposing yourself and getting your body used to it changes your body's reaction. And then also, like you say, can have this effect or impact on brown fat. So it's basically your body learning how to adapt to this. And I do think it will have a benefit for diving and getting used to the cold.
Well, we'll have a conversation in 12 months and see.
Yes,
I suppose
let's.
the environmental impact, though, for me is I'm not in the shower now for 40 minutes. I'm in the shower for
Mm,
5, and I've not got it. I'm not burning loads of it, electricity, getting it red hot. I'm keeping it relatively
yeah.
low. So the impact on my wallet's going to be fantastic. My wife can have it as high and long as she wants. I don't care. So some of the things I've noticed whilst I've been getting to know you
Mm,
over the last few weeks, and obviously looking around to try and find things we can talk about. You had a video on of a dissolvable, like I want to say a dissolvable plastic bag, but clearly wasn't plastic,
mm,
but like some packaging, and you were putting in some water. Was
yep.
that like where was that from?
So that was actually from Finisterre. So Finisterre had sent me a top, and it was to support their new range that was coming out in collaboration with the Natural History Museum. And they've basically, they're a very aware, like they're a brand that's very aware of like plastic pollution and environmental threats, and so they've changed all of their plastic bags to bags that are made from, I think it was plant cellulose. So it just dissolves in water. So it just breaks down into its natural compounds and then just disappears.
I was telling somebody about that this morning. I'd been
Mm,
to, for what I do for a living, I went out to buy some materials for work, and they tried to give me half a dozen things that I could just carry in one hand in this very similar plastic bag. It didn't have a
mm,
zip tie or anything on the top. I was like, just keep it, mate. I don't need it. It's just one more thing to go in the rubbish as soon as I get back in my van. I'll tip all them things into my van and put that in the bin. So
yeah.
keep it. And I said, oh, have you ever come across these like vegetable protein or whatever it is
Mm,
bags? I didn't know what it was at the time. Obviously, I'd
mm,
seen a video, and he's like, "Oh no, what's this?" And I said, "Oh, I'm interviewing somebody later, and I've got this thing that I'd seen her do." And I was like, obviously, if you're a new business, you just bought 40,000 plastic bags, you might as well just use them rather than put them in the bin. But if you can
yeah.
make that obvious choice,
Mm,
like much like Fourth Element have done, haven't they, with the Ocean Positive rebranding,
yes.
and they had a big surge last year, I think it was, to try and
Mm,
2020 was going to be the year, and obviously it went a bit nuts, didn't it, last year? So they
yeah.
didn't really get everyone together to do what they wanted to do. But
Yeah.
there's been a knock-on effect with them. They're using no plastics now in the packaging. Everything comes in a paper bag and that. So
Yeah.
it seems that we're on the turn, but how quick can we turn?
Definitely. And this is, I think, it's so great to see the diving industry and, brands actually taking an active role in ensuring that the materials they're using or the packaging that they're using has, the least impact possible on our oceans. And so something that I love so much about Fourth Element is that, I've been working with them since 2016. That's when they first sponsored me with some kit back on an expedition out to Indonesia. And you know, that was to help us go and actually do our plastics research. But since they've been, using or changing the materials that they're using to make their items and their kits. So for example, the Ocean Positive range is made from a substance called econyle, which is essentially recycled nylon. And so they're repurposing materials that would otherwise go into landfill, and putting it back into clothes, which is just fantastic. And it's all about creating this sort of circular economy. So, it's not just, we create these plastic products and then they just end up being buried, or worse, in our oceans and sort of permeating into all areas of our oceans and threatening marine life. So yeah, it's wonderful to see brands taking or being I guess, pioneering this area and making the diving industry as sustainable as possible, because we really do need it. Because unfortunately, quite a lot of the materials that are used for things like wetsuits, can sometimes have some nasty toxins and chemicals. And so, Fourth Element have even produced a natural, it's called the surface suit, and it's made from natural rubber. So, just using different materials like this, that is just changing, it's just changing the industry and for the better, so that when we get in there, we're obviously contributing the least impact possible.
That surface suit, is that the blue one that you're wearing on that picture you sent me?
Yes, it
Is it?
is.
It's nice that. I've got it's a different brand. It's O'Neill mine, but it's
Yep.
very similar, top entry.
Yep.
But I like not only the colour, but I like the look. I hate a back zip
Yes.
entry.
Oh,
I'm not keen on them at all.
drives me crazy.
Although
Absolutely
you do
drives me
have to
crazy.
dislocate your shoulder to try and get out of a top entry, don't you? But
So I've got a couple of different Fourth Element suits, and they're I think that they're all really, really good in comparison to some other ones that I've had in the past. But yeah, I do definitely much prefer having some, a zip that I can get to here without having to wrestle to try and find the strap at the back and then hoik it down. It is a bit of a strange, if you really think about it, it's a bit strange that that's how the design has been for so many years.
speaking of strange things, tell us about this duplicate Instagram account you've got. Then how are you getting on with it?
Oh, thankfully it's
Are you
disappeared.
friends?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Maybe it was someone I know. Usually these people are always people that you know, aren't they? So thankfully it's gone, this duplicate account. But essentially that was off the back of the Fourth Element giveaway that I was doing. It was obviously causing too much chaos on Instagram and getting too much attention. And someone decided it would be brilliant to steal my identity and also try to muscle in on that giveaway and pretend to be announcing the winners, which fortunately everyone jumped to kind of my defense. And I mean, I hadn't seen it myself. I was notified from people that follow me and had been, asked to follow this account. And so if people hadn't have told me, then it would have gone under my radar and I'd have had no idea. But thankfully, no one fell for it.
Did you get much help from Instagram with it?
No. I think Instagram, the problem is with all of these big social apps, it's not people that are reviewing these issues. And so it's, essentially a computer that's deciding whether or not is evaluating your report or, what you've sent in. And so unfortunately they said, this person isn't breaking any guidelines. I was like, I'm pretty sure they are. They've stolen my profile picture, my identity, and pretending that they are announcing the giveaway and therefore, taking people's details for whatever malicious purpose, I don't know. So yeah, was not very helpful at all from Instagram.
I had a similar instance. Now, bear in mind, Instagram are owned by Facebook, aren't they now? At the beginning of November, my Facebook account that I'd had since 2007, I think it was, so quite a lot of stuff on. My kids were still very young then, so there's loads of pictures of them on and all my life and stuff. That I don't have a photo. Who has photo albums now? They're all on social media, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, at the beginning of November, I logged on in the morning, as I do, with my cup of tea and my breakfast, just having a look through. And it says, your email address has been changed. Click here. Now, it was a legitimate... I checked that first. Couldn't get on my Facebook, so I checked, was this a legitimate email? Tried to get on. My name had been changed, but it was to my ex-girlfriend's name, so that was weird. But only my first name, so it was like, whatever. And then the profile picture had been changed, and all the sort of bio at the top, so they was offering themselves out for married, single, or whatever kind of men.
Wow.
Trying to pretend it was a woman, and then obviously everyone started reporting it, so it got blocked and banned and all the rest of it. So I sent off a picture of my driving license, said what had gone on, but it wasn't really, there isn't a real good page to say, I really need to contact Facebook because I need your help now. It was like a pretty ambiguous page, so you just put in your ID and whatever, and nothing ever came back. So I left it a few weeks thinking, it'll just resolve itself. Went back on, profile gone. Like this has been removed now. Any pages that were attached to it, so I had like a scuba diving one, like Andy the Northern Diver page was attached to that. That's gone, and now they've gone. We've looked into this matter, and unfortunately, it can't be resolved because you broke the guidelines. Gone. I'm like, right. Well, I don't ever want to go back on Facebook, ever.
Wow. Gosh, that's so unhelpful and horrible, isn't it? Just how, yeah, gosh, no, social media is such a blessing and a curse. Like, it's brought so many of us together. Social media is what's brought us together, but at the same time, it can be, yeah, just used for such evil at the same time. It's kind of scary.
Well, something you touched on before about how all the different plastics that we make or
Mm.
that we use in day to day, like we don't really understand how bad they are and where they're getting. One of the videos I'd watched, you were trailing a net behind the boat. Was that the one in Indonesia?
Yes, so this was the OceanGeographic expedition to the Coral Triangle, and I was lead
That was it, yeah.
scientist. Yeah, so I was lead scientist assessing plastic pollution in this area. And what you see us using there is a trawl, and essentially we pull that along the surface to capture any plastic that might be floating in the first sort of surface layer of the water.
One of the things you pulled out was a little logo. It said "Made in the USA" or something like that, and clearly
Yes.
it gone around the world. Now there's another guest, and she's not too far from you, more in Cornwall, I think. Octavia Sharks, her name is. She's
Mm-hmm.
got a really funny Instagram. Every Saturday she has Shark Saturday, so she comes on, jumps up in front of the camera, and she's only about 18. She's a young kid, but she's dead bubbly and great about it. And I've had her on here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And she gives you some interest about sharks. She's all homeschooled, so she's dead hippie and all the rest of it. But every day she goes out walking the beach. I think it's called Blackpool Sands, near where she lives. And every single day she's finding some litter or rubbish or whatever and showing it off. And
Yeah.
one of the tags was like from a lobster pot, but it was from
Oh,
like
wow.
the other side of the Atlantic. It's just mad, isn't it? How things will travel and get around the world, and it's just such crap. And I just wonder, how on earth can we ever get rid of it?
Yeah.
I don't think we
Well,
can.
unfortunately, plastic is just so ubiquitously spread. And I think the problem is that we became aware of it probably too late. And even though we're aware of it now, we still, don't have the practices in place or the laws in place to kind of, make a big dent in the issue. Unfortunately, plastic is still ending up in our oceans at a really alarming rate. And you know, we're making small changes here, there, and everywhere. Like Fourth Element brands are becoming more conscious and also understanding that the role that they play in mitigating this impact. But yes, that that sticker that I found was just so poignant. I mean, it couldn't have been a better representation of how plastic pollution's a global problem. And just because plastic is entering the ocean in one area doesn't mean that it's not potentially going to end up somewhere else. So, even if your country might be very good at, managing plastic pollution, plastic going in from somewhere else can equally end up on your shores. And this is one of the problems that makes it so hard. Once it's in the ocean, trying to get it out is so difficult. The ocean is so vast. It's found in our deep seas, in the surface, on our beaches. It's even been found on top of Everest. That's the one I was going to say. I was like, Snowdon's not the tallest mountain. Everest. So plastics have even been found up there. So yeah, it's scary. It's really, really scary. And I really, unfortunately, the issue is so complicated. I'm not sure how we are going to solve it. It's going to take a lot of different steps to kind of to make a dent in it, I think.
If we all do a little bit, I suppose it's better than none of us doing anything, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, individual action definitely has a part to play, because we, the consumers, if we're saying no to plastic or single-use plastic or changing our habits, that sort of has like an effect then on levels above us. But equally, it's down to our policymakers and businesses to actually, make that change for us. Unfortunately, there's, still there's certain things that you won't be able to buy that aren't in plastic, and therefore we have no choice. But this it's a different, plastic pollution is a different issue in every country around the world. If you go to poorer countries where they don't have waste management practices, like Indonesia, where they rely on bottled water for water that they can drink, there's no alternative to a plastic bottle. So telling them not to drink, or to use plastic bottles is like saying, well, I'll go and drink that dirty water instead. So it's really, really complicated. And I guess the thing is, in wealthier countries like ours, you know, we have that ability to make that choice. And so definitely here, that's, I think, one of the best things that we can do is, yeah, take individual action, but also put pressure on our policymakers to put the legislation in place to stop single-use plastics from being used, and also mitigation in place to stop it from getting in the ocean.
I'm still shocked at how much litter we see. Even yesterday when I was making that video, I was up, you know, there's a hill behind us, that forms part of the Pennines called Winter Hill. There's a big TV transmitter on there, and it's beautiful. It's really scenic. You know, it's out of the way, off the beaten track, and there's just so much, you know, fly tipping, and just kids or people just leaving bottles and cans knocking around. But another thing that I'm massively interested in is expeditions, purely because that's how I learned to dive, but through the military. And I've seen you advertise yourself as an expedition leader.
Yes.
So give us a little brief about that, would you? But tell us about perhaps one of your most memorable expeditions, or like a little story from it or something.
To date, the biggest and best expedition, you know, where I was a leader, has to be the one where I went to Indonesia on the Silesium expedition with videographers, photographers from around the world, scientists. And so I was a leader in the sense I was leading the plastics research and leading that work across 3 boats. And, you know, the whole expedition was just absolutely incredible. That, you know, Rajaram Pat is like the jewel of our oceans. It's like the marine biodiversity hotspot. It's the place, you know. It's just, I can't even describe to you what the diving is like there. If anyone ever gets the chance to go, do it, because it will blow your mind. And I guess I'm very lucky that was the first expedition that I had led, and it was to such an incredible place. And I've had probably some of the best dives of my life out there. And so, you know, quite a lot of the dives, we had a purpose of going down, you know, say to count corals, take pictures, or to count fish. But, you know, on every dive, there was something incredible to see. I remember at one point we were going along this reef wall, and then heard the ding, 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 and looked out to the blue, and there was just this shiver of hammerheads just coming towards us. And, you know, I'd never seen a hammerhead in my life, let alone 18 of them just, you know, making their way towards us. Absolutely blew my mind. And then in an instant, they're gone, you know, moved so quickly. And yeah, just dive after dive after dive like that. And I love expeditions. I love it because you get thrust into an environment where hopefully you're there with lots of other like-minded people. You disappear into isolation where you leave social media behind, and you just totally focused on the place where you are. And usually with these expeditions, you're going to somewhere remote. And I just love that feeling of getting lost in the world and being surrounded by nothing but nature and like-minded people. And, you know, I'm all about having a mission with these adventures. I think something that the whole the exploration world for a very long time has been more about I'm going to go and do this incredible thing and just go and do it, rather than actually like having a mission, you know, associated with it. Like, you know, maybe you're going to collect data or something. And that's what I always want my expeditions to be about, is about going out there, not only experiencing or doing this crazy epic thing, but also having a mission or an objective and collecting data and sort of being able to come back from it and also still add to the world, add to our knowledge, not just for it to be a sort of tick on that bucket list and be like, oh yeah, so I went out to Indonesia and dived with mantas, hooray. You know, that we go out there and experience it, but also bring it back for everyone. So yeah, I had just an incredible time there, and I cannot wait to get back.
Wow. Well, there's just not enough time and enough money and enough. I don't know. There's too many places to go, isn't there?
Yeah.
But that's got to be on our list. I mean, the Philippines for some reason has been on our list, but I don't know. Just looking at that, there, could throw a dart and wherever it'd land, I'd still love to go if I've not been before. So I'd be happy.
Yeah.
So how would somebody that's not a scientist but has a bit of time on their hands and could self-fund and like to get involved with expeditions like that? Can they?
Yeah, so there are lots of specific expedition companies that run with a scientific objective. And you know what? Citizens, you don't have to be a scientist to collect data.
No.
That I think if you've got a will and you work with scientists to come up with like a robust design so that you're not just, you obviously need to make sure that you collect enough, that you like standardize it in a way, there's things that you need to do to make sure that the data you collect can be used. But yeah, you don't have to be a scientist at all. So you could dream up your own expedition, go on one and collect your own data, or you could join other people that go out and do stuff. So I think it's Lindblad, one of the Nat Geo expedition boats. They do a lot of citizen science, like microplastic sampling on their boats. And so, I'm very much at the beginning of my expedition leading career, but that's what I'd like to do, is to go off and work on more boats and do more expeditions at sea, because I've done quite a few in the Red Sea when I was part of the reef ecology lab there, living on a boat for a couple of weeks, going off and sampling all of the outer reef systems that we couldn't get to normally on a daily basis. And it's magical. But yes, if you've got a will and want to get involved, you can design your own experiment or your own sort of what you'd want to do. But I would say get in touch with maybe a scientist and see if you can collaborate. But yeah, you can definitely do it even if you're not a scientist.
My wife's the wrong kind of scientist then. She works in she's a forensic biologist, so she'll be no good. Other than the fact she's a diver, so I'll ask her to see if she want to get involved.
Yeah, she's probably got all the skills, but you never know. You could solve some like underwater crime. I'm sure there's plenty of it. I see a lot of dun, dun, dun. I see a lot of fish squabbling over territory, and you never know. There's probably a couple of murders to solve. I see death on the reef all the time.
Oh, mate, that'd be ace. Right, well, Charlie, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure to share a few similar experiences and note that we were both in the same place at the same time but didn't see each other.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Thanks for your advice, mate, because I'll probably will. Well, there's no probably about it. I will listen and take it in, and hopefully improve my content and where I want to go. I'd like to get more involved with expeditions, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's just knowing the right person or the right sort of strategy to get involved. Certainly now I've done my HSE Pro Scuba, I'm sort of legitimately allowed to do it, aren't I? I know you don't do it outside the UK, but
you would be a huge asset. You'd be a huge asset to any of the expedition groups, because you're highly qualified, and that's what they want. They want people with qualifications. And so there's a lot of diving expedition leaders that go on boats to the poles, go on boats to tropical regions. So yeah, we should collaborate anyway for some YouTube content, but we can have a chat about this as well.
Happy days. Right, well, thanks for coming on. I'll see you later. Cheers, mate.
Thanks so much. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks very much to this week's guest for sharing their stories and interesting tales about the underwater world. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I did recording it. For more information on this episode, take a look at the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and follow us on Instagram for the latest news. Thanks again to Northern Diver International and those of you who have supported me through Patreon. Take care, and I'll see you on YouTube.